Good evening and welcome to Hewitt City Council, the regular meeting of August the 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. At this time, council, all members are here, so we have a declaration of a quorum and a call to order. If everybody please stand and join the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item, public comments. The city council, excuse me, invites citizens to speak on any topic not already scheduled for a public hearing. The Texas Open Meeting Act prohibits the council from discussing, responding to, or acting on any comments or items not properly posted on the agenda. Members of the public who wish to speak must complete the public form and present it to the city secretary. Lydia, do you have any?
No, sir. Couldn't receive.
Thank you. First item on the regular meeting is number 3, and it's consider approval of the minutes of the workshop regular meeting of July the 18th, 2022. Open to council for discussion or any corrections. Call for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Turner.
I make a motion we accept the minutes as written but allow for correction.
Thank you. We have a motion, Mr. Turner. Call for a second, please.
Second.
Mr. Potter. Have a motion from Mr. Turner, a second from Mr. Potter. This time, poll the council for a vote. All those in favor, please have a show of hands. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next item is the presentation of the report from the city engineer, Mr. Whitney. Good evening.
Evening. Mayor, council, on my written report, we have East 1 project going currently. They finished up the pressure testing of the existing water line, performed flushing as of today. Hopefully we'll get a back T sample passed on that project and get everybody switched over to the new line. And then in the meantime right now, while they're waiting on that back T test, doing the 2 manholes for the sewer extension to the opposite side. Once all that's completed, they'll roll into the street work itself. I do have, so one other thing, we did install a bulk meter this week so we can water that street. Y'all may have gotten some phone calls, or you may have heard some phone calls for some dust in that area. We were kind of tiptoeing around it with water restrictions, not wanting to do something extraordinary, but we are going to be watering that street twice a day is what we talked about today with the contractor. So hopefully we'll give those folks some relief. And then later on in the council packet, you will find a change order request for y'all to ratify that. There was a typo on some quantities that contained within the bid schedule itself. Project did not change. It's the same amount of quantity of line that was in the plans. It was just the rectifying it on the bid schedule itself. So that's what that is dealing with. But that is my report, unless there are any questions.
Johnson, any questions? No? Thank you, sir. Our next item is number 5, is the consideration and action on setting date of August the 8th, 2022 for a public hearing on the fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed annual budget. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. City council's had the proposed budget back even prior to the certified values coming out, but back towards the end of June, we began reviewing a proposed budget. We've done budget workshops at the July 5th, July 18th, as well as this evening's workshops regarding the proposed budget. This would meet your obligation for placing that the proposed budget out for public hearing from the citizens in the community. And Mr. Mayor and members of council, also that budget has been on the website prior to or right at the time that we had that first July. So it's been on our website, available for public viewing, as well as the city secretary having a copy of that document for public viewing, should the public ever want to look at that. This would set that public hearing to hear regarding that proposed budget for the August 8th special city council meeting. Thank you.
Before we move to a motion, I'll open it to council for any discussion, please. If none, call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Turner?
I move to set the date of August the 8th, 2022 for a public hearing on the fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed annual budget.
Thank you. I have a motion for Mr. Turner. Call for a second, please.
Second.
Dr. Bruce? I have a motion from Mr. Turner and a second from Dr. Bruce. This time, poll the council for a vote. All those in favor, please show of hands. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next item, number 6, is vote to place adoption of the proposed 2022 tax rate on a future agenda and to set dates for 2 public hearings. Mr. Thomas, do we just want to do, when we do the motion for both 1 and 2 in a few minutes? Just one motion?
No, sir, we need two
Two
separate
separate,
motions on
okay.
those
Okay.
items.
Okay. Turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Earlier in our workshop, we kind of discussed this a little bit in that workshop. The Texas Tax Code requires the city council to take a record vote on the property tax rate projected to fund the proposed budget. This vote tonight only establishes the ceiling for the property tax rate. It will also set 2 future public hearing dates on the property tax, proposed property tax rate, and the adoption date of the property tax rate. So, in the budget that you've been having workshops on, been discussing, that proposed tax rate happens to be the same as the current tax rate. It's 0.540102. This first motion that you have this evening would be to place adoption of this tax rate, 0.540102, cents per 100 valuation, equaling, and then it breaks down in cents for you, the debt service, INS, 0.208484 cents for debt service, 0.331618 cents for maintenance and operations, as an action item for the August 15th, 2022 council meeting to be held at 7 p.m. at the Hewitt City Hall Council Chambers. The second motion then also moves to establish 2 public hearings on that tax rate of 0.540102. That would be August 8th, in conjunction with public hearing on the budget, as well as August 15th, prior to that record vote occurring. With that, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. You do again have the rate calculation worksheet. Again, the important part in this rate calculation worksheet is after receipt of certified values. This really the important page in this is that final page, page 30 of your packet. It has Randy Riggs, the assessor collector's signature on it and dated, but it also provides you a reference to, based upon those certified values, what that no new revenue tax rate is, what that voter approval tax rate is, and what the de minimis tax rate is. With that, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Open to council on suggested motion number 1. Any comments or questions before we move to the motion? Hearing none, help me along here, Bo, if I get off track.
Yes, sir.
Our first motion, call for a motion on item number 1, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Turner?
I move to place adoption of a tax rate of 0.540102 cents per $100 valuation, equaling .208484 for debt service and .331618 for maintenance and operations as an action item for the August 15th, 2022 council meeting to be held at 7 p.m. in Hewitt City Hall, Council Chambers, 200 Patriot Court, Hewitt, Texas.
All right, we have a motion on item number 1 of 2 from Mr. Turner. Call for a second, please. Dr. Bruce. For item number 1 on the description, we have Mr. Turner offering a motion, Dr. Bruce for a second. For item number 1, call for a vote. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, item number 1 passes 7-0. All right, at this time, we open this second item to council for a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Turner,
I move to set 2 public hearings to be held on Monday, August the 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m. and Monday, August the 15th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Hewitt City Hall, Council Chambers, 200 Patriot Court, Hewitt, Texas.
thank you. We have a motion from Mr. Turner. Call for a second, please.
Second.
Mr. Price. We have a motion from Mr. Turner and a second from Mr. Price. At this time, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Thank you. Item number 2 passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, next item, number 7. Is to ratify change order number 1 to the 2020 East Warren Street improvements, First Street to FM 2063 contract with Barnett Contracting, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $48,372. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mr. Whitney briefly referenced this a moment ago. There was a typographical error between the plan sheets for the amount of actual water line that was needed in the project versus what was on the bid sheet. In an effort to keep the project moving and going, I went ahead and authorized Barnett Construction to buy that water line so that that project didn't get held up, waiting to bring this to a city council meeting. But what it did do was it changed the bid amount that was authorized by the city council when the bid was authorized. And that amount differential was $48,372. I think the most important things to remember in this, that original bid amount was $870,134. This changes that total now bid amount to $918,506. This change order does not impact any of the other bids. This would still have been the low bidder as we were moving forward. With that, Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. This time open to council or movement to a motion. Any questions or call for a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Potter?
I move to authorize a change order to the contract with Barnett Contracting, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $48,372.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. We have a motion, Mr. Potter. Call for a second, please.
Second.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a motion for Mr. Potter and a second for Mr. Turner. This time, hold the council for a vote. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Thank you. Motion carries 7-0. Next item, number 8. Is discussion and possible action on ordinance number 2022-08, establishing a school zone and regulating the rate of speed of motor vehicles on a certain section of Ritchie Road, establishing the prima facie maximum speed limits during school hours in such school zones. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you're well aware, Midway ISD has a new school, new elementary school on Ritchie Road that it's planning on opening on August 18th. That being Park Hill Elementary School. There is going to be a need for a school zone in that particular area. The ordinance that you have before you basically provides that safety zone for the school and the traveling public. It would lower the speed limit during the times that are specified either on the sign or when the sign's flashing, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But the configuration of the actual zone itself, if you look towards the schematic, you will notice that the length roughly of that school zone would be in and around where Park Place comes into Ritchie Road and all the way down to where West Warren comes into Ritchie Road. And I'm gonna say this because it'll spur some more conversation. On the county side of Ritchie roadway there. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because Commissioners Court tomorrow will be taking up their side of the roadway while we are taking up our side of the roadway this evening. The signs that you see here in the schematic are depictive of the types of signs and their locations as they're being placed in and around Park Hill Elementary School. Given the one thing that I do want you to understand here is you notice, you see the school's speed limit sign of 20 miles an hour. That is what is being contemplated. You'll notice these hours that are on here, those are going to be different hours than initially than what's there. But the plan is for those main signs that tell you coming down Ritchie Road, whether you know whichever direction you're going, east or west on Ritchie Road, that those are going to be the permanent signs will be flashing LED signs. So the perimeter of the sign will have LED lighting on it, and it will flash. And that will be the time that the zone, school zone, is going to be enforced. The unfortunate part about it is there's about a 4-week backlog on those signs, and so we're going to have to go with more of a sign like what you see here, which is a regular school zone sign. It'll just have posted time on it as opposed to be flashing. They'll be installed on both sides of the road by general services crews, and we've got all those signs on order. We are going to pay and maintain the signs on both sides of the roadway. I don't believe that there will be a problem with us doing that with the county. And in all practical purposes, it was more expedient to do it that way than to try to determine if the county wanted permanent power run to these or if solar with battery backup was sufficient, which is what we were wanting to do. We didn't want to get in a situation where our sign on one side of the road looked different from the sign on the other side of the road, if you would. And then when one of them been flashing, who's supposed to go out there and fix it when it isn't flashing, that type of thing. It's just easier for us to be able to handle that. With that, Mr. Mayor, members of council, it is ordinance number 2022-08. It's an ordinance of the city of Hewitt, Texas, establishing a school zone and regulating the rate and speed of motor vehicles on a certain section of Ritchie Road, establishing prima facie maximum speed limits during school hours in such a school zone, providing for penalties, providing for an effective date, and finding an attorney. That the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. With that, Mr. questions you may have regarding this ordinance.
Thank you. Council, any
I have a
questions?
question.
Yes, Mr. Turner.
Go ahead, let him go first.
Mr. McCallum.
You said the county's going to take this up tomorrow, or after the next meeting. Is there something that they could do that would change our, make a change to our ordinance?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think with the advent of the city installing and purchasing the signs and willing to maintain them, it's a matter of becomes basically to them a matter of enforcement. And they have to establish that zone on their side of Ritchie Road.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Turner.
I think I know the answer, but because of two people in there are gonna ask me, the county will not reimburse us for doing their side. We just want it all to be continuous and exact the same, right? So the city is taking on the responsibility of buying, putting them up, maintaining and everything, but there'll be no reimbursement or consideration back from the county for such work, right?
Mr. Mayor, Council Turner, that's correct. I mean,
Okay.
we're not looking for reimbursement from the county on that. And it will go a long way to uniformity in that particular area, because the county has some requirements that maybe we don't want to necessarily get into, but on the other side of the coin, just to kind of give council an idea, all the signs, including the LED flashing signs, not including the installation, on poles, hardware, signs, everything, we will get done for less than $12,000. And then, of course, we'll have labor costs associated with installation, but in terms of cost of the signs and that, it will be less than $12,000. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both. I just wanted to make sure, I thought I knew the answer, I just wanted to make sure I did, so when they ask, I can tell them. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anybody else? We'll call for a motion, but first, thanks, Bo. Thanks, Mr. Whitney, for so much y'all did in a short period of time to see this happen, so thank you. This time, we'll call for a motion on agenda item number 8.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Turner.
I move approval of ordinance number 2022-08, establishing a school zone and regulating the rate and speed of motor vehicles on a certain section of Ritchie Road as prescribed in the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion for Mr. Turner. Call for a second, please.
Second.
Dr. Bruce. Have a motion for Mr. Turner and a second from Dr. Bruce. This time we'll poll the council. All those in favor, please show of hands. Thank you. Motion carries 7-0. And for adjournment, call for a motion, please.
So moved.
Mr. Turner, and a second.
Second.
Dr. Bruce. We have a motion, Mr. Turner, a second from Dr. Bruce. Call for a vote. All those in favor, please.